Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. Juan Carlos Ferrero doesn't sugarcoat things. Never has, probably never will. And in his latest comments about Carlos Alcaraz, the former world number one and current coach turned heads with an admission that's equal parts honest and uncomfortable. While praising his former protégé's incredible play, Ferrero let slip something that reveals the complicated reality of modern tennis coaching. It's hard to see Carlos Alcaraz compete and your whole team sitting in the chair, Ferrero said recently, before quickly adding the expected platitudes. I'm very happy with Carlos Alcaraz's game. He's at a great level. Congratulations to him and keep it up. That first part, though? That's the real story. That's the unfiltered truth that most coaches would keep locked away in private conversations. But Ferrero said it out loud, and it opens up a fascinating window into what it's like to be a top coach in an era dominated by generational talents. Let's be clear about what Ferrero is saying here. He's not criticizing Alcaraz, he's not bitter or resentful. What he's doing is acknowledging a very human reaction to watching someone you used to coach absolutely demolish the competition while your current players are, well, sitting in their chairs, watching, learning, hopefully, but mostly just watching. The thing is, Ferrero knows Alcaraz better than almost anyone in tennis. He was there during the formative years. He helped shape the game that's now terrorizing opponents on every surface. He saw the raw talent and helped refine it into something truly special. And then, as these things sometimes go in professional sports, they went their separate ways. Alcaraz is now working with Samuel Lopez, and Ferrero has his academy and other players to develop. But here's where it gets interesting. When you've coached someone like Alcaraz, when you've been part of building something that special, what's it like to watch from the outside? What's it like when your current students are sitting courtside, watching this player you used to coach do things that seem almost unfair? Ferrero's honesty here is actually pretty refreshing. Most coaches would dance around this. They'd give you the PR-approved answer about being proud and happy and all that stuff. And look, Ferrero does say those things too, but he leads with the uncomfortable truth first. It's hard. It's really hard. Think about it from his perspective for a second. You're Juan Carlos Ferrero. You've won Grand Slams. You've been number one in the world. You know what excellence looks like because you lived it. And now you're trying to help other talented players reach those heights. But every time you turn on a tournament, there's Alcaraz doing things that make it look easy. Hitting winners from impossible positions, running down balls that should be unreachable, playing with a joy and freedom that's infectious. And your players? They're working hard. They're doing everything right. But they're not Alcaraz. Very few people are. That's what makes him special, right? But it doesn't make it any easier to watch when you're trying to build the next generation. The academy system in tennis is brutal in its own way. You get these kids when they're young, full of dreams and potential. You work with them for years. You invest time, energy, expertise. You believe in them. And then reality sets in. Maybe they make it to the top 100. Maybe they have a good run at a small tournament. Maybe they never quite break through. Meanwhile, the Alcarazes of the world are collecting Grand Slam titles and making history. It's not anyone's fault. That's just how elite sports works. But Ferrero's comment pulls back the curtain on that reality in a way we don't usually see. The economics of it all add another layer, too. When you've got a player like Alcaraz on your resume, it raises your profile. It brings players to your academy. Parents see that Ferrero worked with Alcaraz and think, maybe he can do the same for my kid, but it also creates expectations that might not be realistic. Not every talented teenager is going to become Carlos Alcaraz, no matter how good the coaching is. And Ferrero knows this better than anyone. He's been in the game long enough to understand that talent development is part science, part art, and part luck. You need the right player with the right mentality at the right time. Even then, there are no guarantees. Injuries happen. Mental blocks develop. Sometimes players just plateau. But when parents are paying for academy training and they see Alcaraz on TV, they're not thinking about all the variables. They're thinking about results. And that puts pressure on coaches like Ferrero to produce more Alcarazes, which is basically impossible. The media doesn't help either. Every time there's a young Spanish player showing promise, the comparisons start immediately. Is this the next Alcaraz? The kid hasn't even won a challenger event, and they're being measured against a multiple Grand Slam champion. It's unfair, and Ferrero has to manage those expectations. What makes this even more interesting is the timing. Alcaraz is currently on an absolute tear. The guy is playing some of the best tennis we've seen in years. He's not just winning, he's dominating. He's making other top players look ordinary, and he's doing it with this style that's both brutal and beautiful. So, when Ferrero says it's hard to watch, you can understand why. It's not just that Alcaraz is playing well, it's that he's playing at a level that reminds everyone of what peak performance looks like. And if you're coaching players who are trying to compete at that level, watching Alcaraz must feel like watching someone play a different sport. The relationship between Ferrero and Alcaraz has always been interesting. They split in 2021, which raised some eyebrows. Alcaraz was clearly on the upswing, and many wondered if parting ways with Ferrero was the right move. But looking back now, it's hard to argue with the results. Alcaraz has won multiple Grand Slams. He's been world number one. And Ferrero, he's been supportive throughout. He's never thrown shade or suggested that he should get more credit, which makes this recent comment even more striking. It's not coming from bitterness or regret. It's coming from honesty about the strange position he finds himself in. Because here's the thing about coaching at the highest level. It's not just about technical knowledge or tactical awareness. It's about psychology. It's about belief. It's about convincing players that they can compete with the best. And how do you do that when one of your former players is out there showing just how high the bar really is? Imagine being a young player in Ferrero's academy. You show up for training, and your coach is Juan Carlos Ferrero. That's pretty cool, right? He's been there, done that. But then you turn on the TV and watch Alcaraz, and your coach tells you he worked with that guy. He helped build that. And now, here you are, struggling to break into the top 200, while Alcaraz is adding another trophy to his collection. It's motivating, sure. It shows what's possible. But it's also intimidating. And for Ferrero, watching that dynamic play out must be complicated. He wants his current players to succeed. He believes they can improve, but he also knows what true greatness looks like, because he coached it. The comment also reveals something about the hierarchy in tennis right now. Alcaraz isn't just winning. He's establishing a standard. He's showing what the next generation of tennis can be. And everyone else is playing catch-up. That includes players at all levels, from those fighting to make a living on the Challenger Tour to established pros trying to stay relevant. For coaches like Ferrero, this creates a unique challenge. How do you keep your players motivated when they're constantly being compared to someone who seems to be playing a different game? How do you help them find their own path when the Alcaraz path looks so much better? The answer, of course, is that not everyone can be Alcaraz. That's fine. That's normal. Tennis has always had its stars and its supporting cast. But when you've been intimately involved in developing one of those stars, watching from the outside must hit different. Ferrero's academy is actually doing pretty well. He's got some talented players working their way up the rankings. But none of them are Alcaraz. None of them are likely to be the next generational talent. And that's okay, but it doesn't make it less hard to watch when Alcaraz is doing his thing on the biggest stages. There's also an element of what if in all this. Would Alcaraz be even better if he'd stayed with Ferrero? Would he have won more? Less? The same amount? These are questions without answers, but they probably cross Ferrero's mind. Any coach would think about it. You invest years in someone, help them develop their game, and then they move on and become a superstar. You're happy for them, obviously, but you also wonder about the role you could have continued to play. To his credit, Ferrero seems to have made peace with it. His comments aren't bitter or resentful, they're just honest. And in a sport where everyone is usually so careful with their words, that honesty is refreshing. It's okay to admit that something is hard. It's okay to acknowledge complicated feelings. That doesn't diminish his pride in Alcaraz's accomplishments or his commitment to his current players. What's interesting is how this comment humanizes the coaching profession in a way we don't always see. We tend to think of coaches as either attached to a star player or not. We don't often think about what it's like to be a former coach of a star player. The weird limbo of still being connected to their success, but not being part of the day-to-day process anymore. Ferrero is still a big name in Spanish tennis. His academy is well respected. He's got credibility and expertise, but he's also forever going to be known as one of the guys who helped develop Alcaraz. That's a blessing and a curse. It gives him credibility, but it also creates this comparison that probably follows him everywhere. And let's talk about those players sitting in their chairs. That's such a vivid image, right? They're not just watching tennis. They're watching excellence. They're watching someone operate at a level they're trying to reach. It's educational, sure, but it's also probably demoralizing at times, especially if they're in a slump or struggling with confidence. Ferrero knows this. He's been around long enough to understand the psychological toll of constantly being exposed to greatness when you're trying to build your own career, and his comment suggests he's thinking about how to manage that dynamic. How do you use Alcaraz as inspiration without letting him become an impossible standard that crushes confidence? There's a real art to this. Some players watch someone like Alcaraz and think, I want to be like that. I'm going to work harder. Others watch and think, I'll never be able to do that. What's the point? The difference between those two mindsets can determine a career. And as a coach, you're trying to cultivate the first mindset while being realistic about what's achievable. The training environment must be affected by this too. When you're running drills at the academy, and everyone knows that Alcaraz did these same drills a few years ago, there's this unspoken comparison happening. Did he do it better? Was he faster? These aren't helpful questions, but they're human nature. The coaching profession in tennis is weird anyway. Unlike team sports, you're not really competing against other coaches. You're trying to help your individual player be the best they can be, but there's still this sense of competition, especially when it comes to prestige and reputation. And when one of your former players is out there winning everything, that reflects on you in a complicated way. Some people might hear Ferrero's comment and think he's complaining, but I don't read it that way at all. I think he's just being real about the emotional complexity of his situation. He's proud of Alcaraz. He's committed to his current players. But watching the contrast between them is hard. All of those things can be true at the same time. And honestly, good for him for saying it out loud. Tennis needs more honesty like this. We're so used to bland press conference answers and carefully managed public personas that when someone says something real, it stands out. Ferrero didn't have to add that first part about it being hard to watch. He could have just gone with the congratulatory stuff, but he chose to be honest. And that tells us something about who he is as a person and a coach. It also raises questions about what success means in coaching. Is success only measured by producing Grand Slam champions, or is it about helping players maximize their potential, whatever that might be? Ferrero has done both. He helped Alcaraz on his path to greatness, and he's helping other players carve out professional careers. Both of those things have value, but when the contrast is so stark, when you're watching your former protege dominate while your current students watch from their chairs, it's natural for it to feel hard. The tennis world will keep spinning. Alcaraz will keep winning. Ferrero will keep coaching. And those players sitting in their chairs will keep working, keep learning, keep trying to find their own way in a sport that can be incredibly unforgiving. But Ferrero's comment will stick with me, because it's a reminder that even at the highest levels of professional sports, We're all just humans trying to navigate complicated emotions and relationships. So, yeah, it's hard to see Carlos Alcaraz compete while your whole team sits in the chair. But that's tennis. That's sports. That's life, really. You do your best, you help where you can, and you deal with the complicated feelings that come with watching someone you help develop reach heights that most people can only dream about. And maybe, just maybe, one of those players sitting in the chair right now will surprise everyone. Maybe Ferrero's next project will be the one that breaks through. Maybe we'll be talking about them the same way we talk about Alcaraz in a few years. Or maybe not, but either way, you've got to respect the honesty of a coach willing to admit that watching greatness from the outside is hard, even when you're proud of it. Think Ferrero's being too honest, or is this the realness tennis needs more of? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's debate whether coaches should keep these feelings private or bring them into the open. And if you found this deep dive interesting, share it with your tennis-loving friends. They'll definitely have opinions on this one.